The coroner didn't sleep much that night, not because the body on the table was gruesome, but because it wasn't. Most people, by the time they reach their 60s or 70s, have the usual wear and tear: creaky joints, sun-worn skin, a few life-happen scars. But this woman, no wrinkles, no age spots, no brittle bones. Her cells looked like they'd copied from a 25-year-old. He checked the birth certificate again, the one delivered with her medical file, because surely someone in records was playing a prank. Date of birth, March 2nd, 1889. Even for a town this small, even for a coroner who once accidentally performed an autopsy on a mannequin, this was new. A real mystery, or depending on who you asked, the oldest story in the world. You know, a skin care routine that went a little too well? That never happens. What the coroner didn't know, not yet, was that this woman lived through years and years, wars after war, vanished from history twice, and carried a name that local families whispered like a warning. And by sunrise, her story would pull in scientists, folklore lovers, and newspaper vultures, and one very confused sheriff who swore he'd seen her walking around town just last month. This is the beginning of the woman who never aged. The medical staff at St. Agnes Community Hospital had seen their share of strange cases: farm industries, moonshine mishaps, even a man who tried to wrestle his own tractor. But nothing prepared them for her. They admitted her 3 days before the coroner ever saw the file. She'd been found unconscious near an old service road at the edge of town. No ID, no purse, no car. Just a thin cotton dress and bare feet, even though the nights were cold enough to freeze the stitching off a scarecrow. The nurses guessed she was around 25 years old. Maybe 28 at the most. Pretty, quiet. No obvious injuries except for a mild concussion. But the test? That's where things fell off the map. Her bones showed no age-related mineral loss. Her skin, collagen levels off the charts, like she'd never seen a day of sun or gravity. Her blood work came back so pristine, one doctor joked she had the cholesterol of a golden retriever on a vegan diet. Nobody laughed. They were too busy rerunning the tests. Then came the DNA analysis, the one they sent to the lab 2 states over because their own machine kept spitting out errors like they were offended. And when the results arrived, her methylation patterns, the chemical markers that tell your cells how old you really are, looked frozen. Not slowed, not unusual. Frozen, as if her body pressed pause decades ago. The hospital's head physician, Dr. Rivera, stared at the printout for a long time before saying the sentence nobody wanted to say out loud. She's not aging. That's when they compared the fingerprints and found a partial match to a woman reported missing in the 1940s. A woman who should have been, 88, 90? Not 25. Within hours, rumors spread through the halls. Nurses whispering that she healed strange, that her body stayed warm at night, without blankets, that sometimes she talked in her sleep, in French. But the strangest part? Whenever she woke up, she looked at the doctors like they were the ones stuck in the wrong time. Word travels fast in a small Appalachian town. Faster than any lab result, and faster than any sheriff report, and faster than any rumor has any right to move. By the time the hospital faxed the coroner, half the county already knew. There was a woman up at St. Agnes who didn't look her age. Of course, they didn't know which age, but gossip fills in the blanks faster than science can. Old-timers gathered out at the diner, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like burnt apologies and the pie fixes everything else. They leaned over their plates, talking low, telling the younger folk a story most hadn't heard in years. A story about a woman named Élise Moreau. According to local lore, Élise wasn't born in Appalachia. She arrived, walked out of the woods wearing a long blue dress and speaking French so softly it sounded like she was afraid of the language itself. Some say she came from a traveling family. Others claimed she escaped a war overseas. But the version the elders preferred, the version that made the younger ones sit a little straighter, was the oldest one. They said Élise had once wandered into a hidden cave high in the Appalachian ridges, a place local called the Spring Hollow, where the water ran warm year-round and wild violet bloomed even in winter. The same place where, according to legend, the mountain tested people. Some who entered came out healed. A few came out cursed, and one, just one, came out unchanged. Folks swore that when Élise first appeared in town, back in the earliest 20th century, she looked about 20. And 30 years later, she still looked 20. She disappeared from time to time, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, but always came back exactly the same. Never older, never younger, never different. Must have been nice, honestly. The rest of the country was aging like milk in July. But even those who believed the story kept quiet. Appalachian folk have rules. The first being, you don't tempt mountain things by speaking their name too often. And second, if the mountain gives you something, it will ask for something back. So when the news spread that the young-looking woman had turned up at the hospital, injured, confused, and speaking French in her sleep, the oldest residents didn't see a miracle. They didn't see a medical mystery. They saw a story they'd prayed had ended decades ago, walking right back into town. By the end of the week, St. Agnes Community Hospital looked less like a rural medical center and more like a research convention somebody forgot to organize. Scientists arrived in waves. Geneticists, endocrinologists, cellular aging specialists, all of them wearing the same expression. That breathless mix of excitement and existential panic normally reserved for astronomers who spot something moving toward Earth. They crowded around her charts, arguing over terminology no one had used since grad school. Some claimed she was a genomic relic. Others insisted she represented a rare developmental stasis phenotype. One postdoc, who hadn't slept in 48 hours, called her a biological nonsense in a dress, which, frankly, wasn't very scientific, but everyone understood the sentiment. I agree. Hospitals hate chaos, but grant money is the exception. So when universities started offering six-figure research collaborations, St. Agnes cleared out an entire wing just to keep the scientists contained. Dr. Riviera, who was overseeing everything, tried to maintain professional composure. But even she couldn't ignore the data piling up on her desk like a medical horror stack. 0 telomere shortening, no mitochondrial degradation, cell replication rates of someone in their mid-20s, a complete lack of age-related epigenetic drift. I don't think I said that right. Her body wasn't just aging slowly, it was not aging at all. Meanwhile, Élise, though still not verbally responsive, kept healing at a rate that made doctors nervous. Bruises faded in hours. Scratches vanished overnight. Her hair, which had been tangled and dull when she arrived, regained a healthy shine by day 3. One nurse muttered that if they could bottle her DNA, Sephora would collapse overnight. She's probably right. But with every answer, more questions surfaced. Why did her metabolism run warm even while unconscious? Why did her EEG readings show brainwave patterns closer to someone meditating than someone injured? And why did she wake up every morning looking toward the window, as if she was waiting for something in the mountains to call her back? The scientists chased data. The doctors chased explanations. But the locals, they chased old memories. Because while the researchers searched for a biological method, the people who had lived here longest believed she was something else entirely. A woman bound to a place older than every lab, every test, every microscope in that building. A woman the mountains had not finished with yet. The sheriff's office isn't known for its paperwork. Most of their files date back to when typewriters were still considered advanced technology. But sometimes old filing cabinets guard secrets tighter than any digital archive ever could. Deputy Miller, a man who believed strongly in 2 things, fishing and not overthinking, had been assigned to dig through decades of missing person reports. Mostly, he was expecting to find nothing more exciting than, water-damaged forms and maybe a mouse nest. He found her. Tucked inside a thin manila envelope was a photograph dated 1915. A sepia portrait of a young woman standing beside a wooden church, her hair pinned back, her gaze direct and startlingly calm. The handwriting on the back, faded, formal, careful. It read, Élise Moreau, parish helper. Now, Deputy Miller stared at the photo for a long time, tapping against his thumb while his brain tried to make excuses. Bad lighting, coincidence, a look-alike. Except the woman in the bed at St. Agnes had the very same eyes, the same jawline, the same faint beauty mark just on her right cheek. The photo, it didn't show someone who merely resembled her. It showed her, unchanged. Miller had seen some wild things. A possum stealing a patrol car donut, a cow walking itself to the dollar store, but a woman who looked identical across 60 years? That was new. He brought the photo to the hospital. Dr. Rivera took one look at it and went silent. Not skeptical, not dismissive, just silent. Then she ordered a second round of biometric comparisons and facial mapping software, the kind usually used in missing person cases or to catch people who don't pay parking tickets in big cities. The match came back 99.73%. That's when Dr. Rivera noticed something else in the sheriff's pile. Parish records from 1915 to 1942, all mentioning the same woman, always described as young, unchanged, or of unusual appearance. Locals reported seeing her on Forest Pass near an old church and, more disturbingly, disappearing into the ridgeline without leaving footprints. The last entry, 1942. 4 simple words scrawled on the margin. Gone. No trace. If the scientists were chasing cellular mysteries and the doctors were chasing medical explanations, this photograph chased something else. Something older. Something colder. Something that suggested Élise Moreau's story didn't start with an accident 3 days ago, but more than a century earlier. Kind of freaky. 3 days after the photo surfaced, 3 days after rumors spread from diner to church to every front porch with a rocking chair, the storm hit. A real one, not the folklore kind. A power surge rolled through the town like a freight train made of lightning, knocking out transformers, streetlights, and finally, the old electrical grid feeding St. Agnes Community Hospital. The lights flickered once, twice, and then the building went dark. Backup generators tried to kick in. They always try. But St. Agnes wasn't built for this. It was built for stitches and sprains, not a town-wide blackout. In the confusion, alarms began beeping like confused baby birds. Nurses scrambled. Patients called out. Somebody in the hallway tripped over a mop bucket and blamed a ghost. Honestly, it was the most excitement the hospital had seen since someone tried to microwave aluminum foil in the break room. But Élise laid motionless in her bed, breathing slow and warm, like she was waiting for a cue the rest of the world couldn't hear. Dr. Rivera rushed to her room with a flashlight, hard hammering. Monitors were dead. Emergency lights failed to activate. The air felt wrong, thick, charged, humming with something that didn't belong in the hospital corridor. The beam of the flashlight landed on the bed. It was empty. No broken glass, no torn sheets, no footprints. Nothing. As if she had stood up and simply walked out of time. Security footage was useless. Power outage, static, the usual. But one frame, just one, burned into the screen. A silhouette illuminated by lightning outside. A woman, hair drifting like it was caught on a slow wind, stepping towards the ridge. Then everything went white, and the hospital caught fire. Investigators later blamed the blaze on a blown converter that overheated during the outage. But the firefighters, the ones who swore they saw violets blooming through the cracks in the foundation as they worked, would quietly disagree. The wing where Élise had been staying was reduced to ash. Nothing inside survived. No medical files, no bedding, no equipment, no body. 2 weeks later, after the smoke cleared and the rubble cooled, a maintenance worker discovered something near the edge of the charred foundation. A single violet, perfectly fresh, growing straight up through the ash. When he bent down to look at it more closely, he noticed faintly pressed into the soot beside it the impression of a bare foot. Small, delicate, pointing towards the mountains, as if she'd stepped out of the fire and gone home. The official report listed the case as unresolved, not unheard of, but unusual for a woman who should have been in the morgue and wasn't. No body, no remains, no trace beyond that single violet and a footprint made of soot. Dr. Rivera filed her notes. The sheriff locked up the 1915 photo. The scientists went back to their universities, clutching data that refused to make sense. But the mountain? The mountain didn't say a word. And maybe that silence was the answer. Some people in town still claim they've seen her. A young woman moving through the ridges at dusk, hair drifting in the wind, leaving no tracks behind her. Others swear that hikers who get lost sometimes hear a gentle voice calling them towards safety, a voice with a soft French lilt. And a few, the oldest few, say the violets bloom brighter wherever she's near, which honestly is better than any weather forecast this country has ever had. Whether she was a medical miracle, a geological myth, or something that science hasn't invented words for yet, one thing seems certain. Élise Moreau never belonged to time, she belonged to the mountain, and the mountain never let her go. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe, because around here, the truth is optional, but strange is guaranteed. This is Truth-ish, where things are mostly true and always strange.